last time we were discussing this poem, There Is Another Sky, and the poet is Emily Dickinson, a woman, an American poet, right? An American poet, Emily Dickinson. She lived a lonely life. She was alone, but she did have a brother whose name is Austin, as we know. And clearly from the poem, we see that Austin was having problems. He had left his home. He was staying somewhere else, and he had a problem. And he was probably depressed. He was upset. Perhaps he was in a dark place. And we know that Emily Dickinson was writing to him, was writing letters to him. And this poem tells us how she is trying to inspire her brother, encourage her brother to feel better, to return home, right? To return to her so that she can help him out. So she's trying to encourage him, to inspire him to come back home. So first we're going to quickly read through the poem, and then we are going to ask you about what you remember about the poem. Thank you very much, Rakshita. So if you all can zoom in on the poem itself. It's a nice short poem, so it fits very well on the screen. Thanks, Rakshita. That's absolutely perfect because I'm on a phone. It's fitting on my screen too. So I want somebody to read, but we'll be reading very slowly, and then we will try to, you will tell me what you understand from that verse. Okay, so if you could put up your Zoom hands, Rakshita Didi will ask somebody to read the first stanza or the first verse, please. There are only 2 verses, as we can see.
Lakshmi has raised her hand.
Yes.
There is another sky, ever sins and fear, and there is another sun saying, thought it is with darkness there, never mind, face it, forget her stem, never mind, silent fields. Here is a little forest who lives in evergreen.
All right, thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, so does anyone remember what is the meaning of serene? Serene in the second line. What is the meaning of serene? Calm.
Yes,
Excellent.
peaceful.
Calm, Shanti. There is another sky. There is another place. Okay, there is another place. Sky, they're using the word sky to say another place. There is another place, ever serene and fair, and there is another sunshine, though it be darkness there. Okay. Never mind. Never mind. What is the meaning of never mind?
Koi baat nahi.
Exactly. Perfect. You know, if Lakshmi and I have to meet and then it starts raining, so she says, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't come. I will say, never mind, Lakshmi, we can meet on another day. And when the poet uses the same thing twice, because she wants to emphasize that, she wants to give importance to that, right? Because she's telling her brother, never mind the faded forest. Here we get his name, Austin, right? So very good. She is talking to her brother in the first verse, and we know from the first verse that her brother is troubled. He is in trouble. He is in a dark place. He's upset. He's perhaps depressed. And she's trying to console him. She's trying to tell him, never mind. Okay, next, please. The next verse, please.
Sneha was raising her hand.
Please read.
Aarti, go ahead. I think Sneha's having network issues.
Here is a brighter garden where not a frost has been. It in its unfolding flowers, I hear the bright bee hum pretty, my brother into my garden come.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So now in the second verse, she's trying to tell him that there is a better place. There can be another place, another sky, another way of living. Another way of living which is brighter, which has beautiful flowers, where the frost has not been. What is frost?
Small, small,
Temperature.
Sorry, I can't hear.
small,
Ma'am, temperature.
Temperature. What temperature? Cold or hot? Ice cold temperature.
cold.
Cold.
Yes, cold temperature. The frost, she's trying to show by the word frost, she's trying to say cold, winter, bad, very uncomfortable. When it is so cold, that is what Emily Dickinson's trying to say. Where the frost has not been, where it is not cold. When it is very cold, flowers can't grow, leaves can't grow, the gardens are not pretty. The bees are not there. The bees, the butterflies, all the beautiful things that you see in the garden are not there when it is very cold, right? So she's telling him here is a better place. And how is she describing that better place? To tell her brother, it is not cold. The flowers are beautiful. The colors of the flowers are beautiful. The bees are humming in this garden. This is just a way of saying that this is a better place, a prettier place, a nicer place for you to come to. So she's trying to get him back, to tempt him to come back home, right? Very good. What do we mean by an unfaded? In the first verse, we see the word faded.
Colorful, ma'am.
Color,
The next
bright,
verse,
bright color,
The something which attract us.
which attracts us. No, Shanaz. What is a
Color.
faded? Something that is faded.
not proper,
Sorry?
not proper,
Not proper in what way? Not proper in what way? Faded. What did I tell you about your old clothes? My old clothes are faded.
color कम हो गया है.
Yes, the color is less, right? So first she's telling him in the first verse, never mind faded forest. Don't worry. As you know that the forest, the flowers fall, the leaves fall, the green leaves go away. Don't worry about things which are not colorful, which are not beautiful, because his life is not beautiful, right? His life is not beautiful. It is dark, it is gloomy, there is no color. So she's saying, don't worry about that. Come to the brighter garden with its unfading flowers, flowers which do not fade, flowers where the color is still beautiful and strong, right? So faded, unfaded. You see the opposite in the poem itself. Okay, so now in a very 2 or 3 sentences, tell me, what is Emily Dickinson trying to do in this poem? Shanaz had said some very nice things last time, if I remember. Anyone got their hand up?
Lakshmi has raised her hand, please. Lakshmi, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. A poet will be try to saying to never mind your life will be not colorful. Never mind you are facing so much problem, but try to give up. Try to stand again and see more better thing in
Very
your
good.
life.
Don't give up. Very good, Lakshmi. Don't give up. Don't give up. Huh? Stand up again. Don't give up. And Lakshmi, one very interesting thing. Come back. Where? Where is she calling him to come back?
come back in better place.
Where is that? Where is the poet? Come back. Help us, somebody. Come back.
Brighter garden.
Home.
Yes, come back home. Come back home. Home is the brighter garden. Do you not know when you're upset, when you're harassed, when you don't know what to do? What do you want to do? You want to go back home, right? Correct, because you feel comfort at home. So she's trying to tell him, come back home. Well done. Shanaz, you had said something very nice about how the feelings of the poem last time. Do you remember any of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us.
The poem is very emotional. The sister,
Yes.
they show the love between sister and brother. How the
Ex-
sister supporting to her brother to never give up the life. And the title itself has a big story. There is another sky.
Very good, Shanaz. Now, why am I making her repeat this? Because when you have to write an appreciation of this poem, which you could well get, because this is the kind of poem in which you can't ask questions and answers. You have to write an appreciation of the poem, what you thought about the poem, what the poem told you, what the poem made you feel. Then what Shanaz said is exactly what you need to write. Okay, exactly what you need to write. It's emotional, it's sensitive. She cares for her brother. She loves her brother. She's trying to tell her brother that she loves him and that he should return home. Correct? Perfectioners. Very nice. Thank you for repeating that for me. Okay. So now we'll quickly, now that we've understood the poem, we are going to go into the poetic devices, which also last time, so many of you all told me, you all found an alliteration and you quickly showed it to me and I was so excited. So can you find the alliterations again, please? Put up your hand if you find them. Yes.
Yes, Diksha, go ahead.
Illustration, faded and forests.
Very good, Diksha. Another one. Thank you, Rakshita. Second stanza.
Yes, Shahnaz, go ahead.
Alliteration, I, bright bee.
Bright bee, very good. Alliteration. So now, Shanaz, you know alliteration is when the letter, the same letter is repeated, right? In the beginning of the word. So B for bright, B for bee. F for faded, F for forest. So we got the alliterations. You told me, I don't have to tell you. Okay. Second thing that is there in this poem, also which you're going to find in a second, I know it. Repetition. Repetition. The poet repeats herself, says the same thing again because she wants to.
Never mind.
Never mind. Exactly. The brother is so upset. The brother is depressed. The brother is sad. So the poet is going on telling him, the sister is going on telling him, never mind. Don't worry. Don't get upset. Never mind. Well done. Was that Lakshmi who answered? Doesn't matter. Whoever answered, it was well answered. Okay, great. So we did alliteration, we did repetition. Okay, onomatopoeia. This also you told me last time. Onomatopoeia, where you can hear, you can almost hear the sound through the word. You can hear the sound. Anyone?
Ma'am, I think darkness.
Darkness, how can you hear darkness?
Silent.
Sorry.
Silent.
Silent. In silence, there's nothing to hear. Please. Yeah.
Bright bee, hum.
Hum. Only hum, Shanaz. Only hum. Bright bee is a picture, but you got to hear the sound. humming sound. That's exactly how the bee sounds, right? So hum is an onomatopoeia. So you found the alliterations, two of them. You found the repetition, never mind. You found one onomatopoeia, and there is only one onomatopoeia. Hum, okay? So you found the sound, the word that makes a sound. Okay, now there are one or two more things in this. Yeah. One other thing is inversion, all right, which they have told us about. Yeah, what is inversion? Even I had to look that up. Inversion is if we say a sentence a certain way, but the poet says it in the opposite way, in the reverse way. The poet says the sentence in the reverse way from how we would normally speak or write. So I'm going to give you an example so that you understand the inversion. I want you to go to the second stanza, the second line. Where not a frost has been. That is an inversion. Why? We would say the frost has not been here. Shanaz has not come here. Won't you say that? Will we say where Shanaz has not come? No, we won't say that. We will say the frost has not been here. But Emily Dickinson writes, where not a frost has been. She has turned the sentence around. She has inverted the sentence. What is the meaning of inverting something? This is a book. This is a straight book. Can you see the book in the camera, please? Because I don't know if you can
Yes,
see.
ma'am.
Okay, this is my book. I am inverting the book. What have I done? Ulta. Right, right, straight up, inverted, straight up, inverted. This is the normal way we will say the sentence or write the sentence. The poet has inverted it. She has changed the order of the words. Change the order is called an inversion. So please, if you think you may not be able to find the inversion, please write it down. I've always told you to keep a paper and a pencil. Where not a frost has been, the second sentence will be an inversion. Yes, Rakshita, thank you. Change the order of the words. She has changed the order of the words. It's an inversion. And the last line of the poem, the last line of the poem is also an inversion. Into my garden come. I would say, come into my garden. Karan, come inside my house. Is that not how we normally talk? That's how we talk. Come inside my house. Come into my garden. But Emily Dickinson has written, into my garden come. She's changed the order. Karan is looking very stressed out. Okay, don't be stressed out, Karan. Some things, if you don't understand them right now, it doesn't matter. You need to just learn those things. Okay, so that if they ask you for the inversion, you know which line it is. As we go along this year, you will slowly understand a lot of things. You've already understood a lot of things. So everything you cannot learn in the same time, right? Our brain can only take in so much information at a time. So don't worry. The first thing you do is don't worry. Okay. So the two lines which show us inversion, where not a frost has been, and into my garden come. This is why I want you all to get your textbooks as fast as possible. Even if you don't buy all the textbooks, if you buy the English book, you can write your notes in the textbook. You can underline, you can write the meanings right there. And that will help you when you're reading it again. Okay. And there is one more thing which we have to do, and that is antithesis. Antithesis, when you have two opposites, two exact opposite words. And in the first verse or the first stanza, we see the two opposites in one line after the other, very, very close to each other. Can anyone find those words? Opposite words.
Serious and fair.
Sorry? Serene and fair are not opposites, beta.
Sunshine and darkness.
Yes, Chana, sunshine and darkness. So when we are looking for antithesis, opposite, sunshine and darkness. Sunshine and darkness.
Forest and
Sorry?
forest and garden.
No, beta, they are not opposites. They are not. This is the only antithesis. Sunshine, they are exact opposites of each other.
Faded and unfaded.
Faded and unfaded. Yes, you're right. But they are not coming. You're right that they're opposites, Karan. But they're not coming close to each other in the poem, okay? This is exactly the next line, which is why it is an antithesis. But I'm very happy that you tried. I'm very happy that you brought it out. It is an opposite, okay? The opposites have to come very close to each other. And here sunshine and darkness are in one line after the other. Like in alliteration also, you see, they have to be one after the other. Correct? Correct?
Ma'am, fading and unfading.
That's exactly what he said, what Karan said. And I'm glad you're also thinking fading and unfading, opposites, but they are too far from each other. They are in two separate stanzas. That is the problem. Okay, so lovely. Very, very nice. I'm so glad you all have all seem to be understanding what we are talking about. And now I'm going to the most important part of the poem, something that we have never done before, which probably you also have never done before. So as I say the new words, I'm going to request Rakshita to write them in the chat box. Rakshita, I've already put them up on our working group, though undoubtedly, of course, you know them all, but even so. So this poem is a very special poem based on the way it is written, the structure of the poem. The structure of this poem tells us that this poem is called a sonnet. S-O-N-N-E-T. This is very, very important, okay? For any exam, this is super important. This poem, There Is Another Sky by Emily Dickinson, is a sonnet. Now, what is a sonnet and why is this poem called a sonnet? Now, quickly tell me how many lines are there in this poem? Count.
14.
14 lines. Okay, golden rule number 1. A sonnet always has 14 lines. Write it. Sonnet, 14 lines. It doesn't have 12, it doesn't have 10, it doesn't have 15. It only has 14 lines. The first golden rule of a sonnet. Okay? So what did I tell you? The structure of the sonnet, the structure of the poem tells us this poem is a sonnet. So the first thing that tells us it's a sonnet is that it has 14 lines. Okay. Now, this form of poetry started many, many, many years ago. I'm just giving you a little background in a country called Italy. And those who have been coming to my GK classes know that Italy is in Europe and it was one of the dominant countries in the dominant European continent at this time in history. If you've not been coming to GK, I suggest you do, because everything overlaps eventually and all knowledge is important. So, in Italy in the 13th century, this form of poetry started. It was called the sonnet. That was the original beginnings of the sonnet. And then later on, we see that there were three main types of sonnets. Three main types of sonnets. So we are not going to worry about all the big names that the sonnets are named. We are only going to look at the sonnet which we have here, which Emily Dickinson is used. Okay, so how do we know that there are three different types? We know from the way the sonnet is written. All sonnets have 14 lines, but they are written in a different way, which tells us which type of sonnet it is. So we know that this sonnet, There is Another Sky, is a Petrarchan sonnet. And Rakshita is going to write it in the chat box, and I suggest you write this down because you cannot remember this. Petrarchan sonnet. Petrarchan. All this I'm telling you is super important. So please pay full attention. If any questions come on this poem, these are the answers. All right. What kind of sonnet is it? It is a Petrarchan sonnet. All right. How do we know it is a Petrarchan sonnet? From the structure of the poem, how it has been written. Yes, Karan.
मैम Petrarchan sonnet मतलब Petrarchan.
Oh, what is the meaning of Petrarchan? Petrarch was the name of a person, a man, an Italian. I was just coming to that. An Italian poet who wrote poems in this way. So Karan, if you start writing sonnets in another way, and if they will become very famous, then we will have a Karan sonnet. Okay. So Petrarch was an Italian who began to write sonnets in a certain structure, in a certain way, in a certain form. So then whichever poets wrote in that form, you call those poems Petrarchan sonnets. Okay?
Yes.
So Petrarch was an Italian. So Petrarchan sonnets are also called Italian sonnets. Also called Italian sonnets. So a sonnet is a poem with 14 lines. There are three main types of sonnets. The sonnet which we have in this chapter, There is Another Sky, is an example of a Petrarchan sonnet. Petrarch was an Italian, and so Petrarchan sonnet is also called Italian sonnet. Okay, can anybody tell me any of these sentences which I just said? And we are here to help you, so don't worry. Speak. Yes, I see Aarti's hand up. Anybody else's hand is up, please, amongst the 19 people?
No.
Ma'am, hello.
Okay, Aarti, start. What can you tell?
Petrarch, an Italian who wrote in this form.
Petrarch was an Italian who wrote poetry in this form. Excellent. Any more?
Petrarchan sonnet.
He was an Italian. So this kind of sonnet is also called
Petro.
It's called a Petrarch.
Italian sonnet.
It's also called an Italian sonnet. Okay, that's brilliant. Let's start from the beginning. How do we know that the poem is a sonnet?
Because of their structure.
Yes, and because it has
14 years.
Excellent,
lines.
because it has 14 lines. Now I'm beginning to recognize your voices, so I don't have to see your faces. Because it has 14 lines. We know it is a sonnet because it has 14 lines. A sonnet has 14 lines. Simple. We know it is a sonnet because it has 14 lines. How many main types of sonnets are there?
There are three types.
Very good. We don't know all the names. I mean, I do know them, but I don't want to confuse you. We want to concentrate on the sonnet, which is here. And this is called a Petrarchan sonnet or an Italian sonnet named after Petrarch, who was an Italian. Okay? And he gave us the structure of this sonnet. Well done. So your appreciation of your poem, you've already got 2-3 marks, guys. Well done. Okay, now the rest of it. So here we have, as you can see very clearly, 2 stanzas. Correct? How many types of sonnets? He is asking.
3 types.
3 types. Thank you, Karan. 3 types of sonnets. Vicky, if you really want to know the names, I'm happy to tell you, but they are a bit laborious and long. So let's finish with this first. Okay. So, as I told you, how many stanzas? Tell me.
2 stanzas.
3 stanzas.
2 stanzas.
There are 2 standards.
Two stanza.
Well done, well done. Petrarchan sonnet has 2 stanzas. Now tell me, are both the stanzas the same size?
No, ma'am. Both the stanzas are different size.
And how many lines in the first and how many lines in the second?
First one is
First, there are
8 and
8
second one
lines
6.
and 6.
Very good. So everybody's answering me. I love it. Okay. Today it has to be a bit of a discussion because we all have to learn and understand this thing very well. The first stanza has 8 lines, right? So the first stanza is called an octave. O-C-T-A-V-E. O-C-T-A-V-E. Octave. Thank you, Rakshita. So I want to tell you a trick. Okay. You know, I have taught you in GK many times that when we say bi, as in bicameral, when we say bi, we mean
2.
2.
Yes, ma'am.
2.
I have taught you that when we say tri, a flag has how many colors? It's a tri. 3.
3.
So when we see octo or oct in front of any word, we mean 8. How many?
8.
8.
How many lines are there in this stanza?
8.
It's 10.
Well done. So when we see bi, we know 2. When we see tri, we know 3. When we say octo or oct, we mean 8. So this one which has got 8 lines is the octave. Okay. And the next verse has how many
Ma'am,
lines?
like octopus. Octopus
Yes.
has.
Brilliant. Like octopus. 8 legs. Brilliant. Okay. So now oct is stuck in your head. Octave. Octopus. Always 8. Well done with that. Now let's look at the second stanza. How many lines?
6.
6.
6.
So the second stanza is called the sestate. S-E-S-T-A-T-E. S-E-S-T-A-T-E. Well done. S-E-S in front of a word tells us the number
6.
7.
6.
6. Okay. So these are all from the Latin language. The Latin language. You don't have to worry about it. For purposes of the exam, you need to know
इंग्लिश एक ही है ना
octave and then sestet. The
मतलब बुक एक
poem,
ही है ना कॉमर्स का
somebody needs to
Hello.
mute, please. Somebody
हाँ?
needs.
इंग्लिश की एक ही होगी
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, you need to know the Petrarchan sonnet has an octave and a sestet, right? It has 2 stanzas, 2 verses. The first verse has 8 lines. It is called an octave. The second verse has 6 lines. It is called a sestet. All right? Good. Well done, guys. So let's move on. Poem, when you look at this poem, in the first verse or the first stanza, Emily Dickinson is explaining to us what the problem is. What the problem is. Anybody tell me what is the problem? What is the problem that this poem is telling us about? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. The poet brother will be very depressed. He did not understand what they do. So they will facing so much problem. They will sad.
Very
And
good. Lakshmi, very good. The poet is telling us the problem in the first stanza. In the octave is telling us the problem. Okay? Absolutely right. What Lakshmi says, the problem is that Emily Dickinson, the poet's brother, is having a lot of trouble. He is depressed. He's in a dark place. Okay? So in the octave, Emily Dickinson is telling us clearly what the problem is. Great. In the second stanza, what is Emily Dickinson trying to do?
in second paragraph, they will selling solution from this problem. They will try to telling to this. Would you do these things?
Superb, Lakshmi. She is telling him the solution. Exactly, Karan. Thank you for putting it in the chat box. She's telling us the solution, not us, but she's telling a brother, supposedly, and in that she's telling the reader of the poem also. Thank you, Rakshita. The octave tells us the problem, the sestet tells us the solution to the problem. Another classic feature of the Petrarchan sonnet. 8 and 6, octave and sestet, problem and solution. Did everybody understand me so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Wow, you kids are super, super smart. And I'm lucky to have you in my class. Good. Now, therefore, the first stanza and the second stanza are different. One is a problem, one is a solution. So, it turns, the poem turns, ulta ho jata hai. First problem, then solution. She's not only going on talking problem for the whole thing. She's not only talking solution for the whole thing. She's first saying the problem, then you see the next stanza. So the poem turns. It's like this, it becomes like this. Problem, solution. The poem turns. This is called a poetic turn. What do you mean by turn? What do you mean by turn?
Ulta karna, ulta sida.
You're walking in one direction, Lakshmi, then you turn and you come back, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to college and I'm walking very fast and oh my God, I forgot to take my books. So I have to turn and I have to come back home, right? So the
Yes.
poem is turning. It's called a poetic turn. And in literary language, when the poem turns like this, it's called a volta. V-O-L-T-A. Volta. It's called a volta. V-O-L-T-A. A. First stanza, she's talking about the problem. Then she turns the poem and starts talking about the solution to the problem. Yes, yes, Karan, yes. Petrarchan sonnets, only Petrarchan sonnets. The volta comes between the two. The octave and the sestate, the volta is in the middle, the turn, the poetic turn. In different types of sonnets, the volta may come at a different place. But in a Petrarchan sonnet, the volta comes between the two stanzas. 8, volta 6. Octave, volta 6. Thank you, Rakshita. The turn comes between the octave and the sestate. If you all also just write down what Rakshita is put in the chat box, that much is enough to get you full marks in the appreciation of this poem. If this poem comes in an exam, they are going to ask you about the Petrarchan sonnet. Very important. Okay. Great. Octave, volta, sestate. Right? 8 lines, octave, volta, the turn, poetic turn, sestate, the 6 lines. Solution. Very good. Now we still have a few minutes left, so anyone can tell me anything about this from octave, sestate, anything that you remember.
Ma'am, can I tell?
Yes?
This poem is sonnet poem. There are 3 types. These types of practice. And there are 2 types for octave and sectres. Octaves, there are 8
The poem
lines.
is divided. Poem is not type beta. The poem is divided, right? Do
Yes,
bhag. Yes. Octave and sestate.
Yes, octave, there
Can you
are
share
8
with
lines.
somebody
And
else?
sective, there are 6 lines.
Yes.
Octave, there are
Anyone else would like?
problem.
Okay, okay, continue.
Sective, there are solution. A poem will be telling into indirect.
Okay, now anything somebody wants to add to all this? Karan has his hand up.
This poem is a sonnet poem, and this poem has 14 lines, and this poem divided 2 types. First for 8 and second 6. First 8 is a
1
octave and
minute,
second.
the poem is not divided into 2 types. It is divided into 2 stanzas, 2 parts. Huh? 2 parts. Bhag. Do bhag mein hai. Na? 2 stanzas or 2 parts. Yes, continue, Karan.
This divided 2 stanzas. First is a problem, and second stanza is a solution.
Good. Good. So the first stanza tells us, the poet tells us, हमें बताती है, the poet tells us the problem. In the second stanza, she tells us the solution. Okay. And one thing which nobody has mentioned, between the 2 stanzas,
Volta.
what is there? Yes, who's speaking?
Volta. Aarti.
Aarti, it's the volta. And what do we mean by volta?
It's turn around.
What a beautiful diagram. Yes, look at how well Rakshita Didi has done this for us. I wish we could take screenshots and keep it on our phone. If you can do it, because this will end your problem. Look at how well she's done it. Very clear. Octave, sestate, problem, solution, Volta. Screenshot it if you can, guys. And remember that you have it on your phone when your exam comes. Right? Yes. Lovely. Thank you, Rakshita. See how much technology can help us today, particularly when we have smart people using the technology. Okay. So lovely. So now I'm going to, for the last 5 minutes, ask you, do you have any problem? Are you still confused? Yes, I know it's a completely different thing. Which are the two types of sonnets? Vicky Khainar for the third time. Karan, tell him how many types of sonnets are there?
Two types of sonnets. First is octave and second is
No,
what's
beta,
that said?
no. There are two parts of a sonnet, of a Petrarchan sonnet. There are two parts. There are not two types of the sonnet. How many types of sonnets are there? I said it
Three
in the
types.
beginning. You told me three.
Three types of sonnet.
Yes, Karan only told me, and now he's getting confused. Part means bhag. Type means उसके अलग अलग तरह से होते हैं. तो सोनेट के 3 टाइप के सोनेट होते हैं, तरह तरह के, है ना? 3. And Vicky Kainar must know those names. Otherwise, he is not going to rest in peace. So Vicky, let me tell you, since we have time. The first is Petrarchan, which we discussed, right? Petrarch, Italian, and therefore Petrarchan sonnet. Second, Shakespearean. Has anybody heard about Shakespeare? Has anyone heard of Shakespeare?
No.
Yes?
He's a great author.
Great. One of the greatest, supposed to be one of the greatest of English literature. He wrote plays. His plays are very important. But he also wrote sonnets. 14 lines. Poems of 14 lines. He also wrote sonnets. But why are his sonnets not called Petrarchan sonnets? They are called Shakespearean sonnets because the structure of Shakespearean sonnets are different. Got it? The structure of Shakespearean sonnets are different. It is not octave, volta, sestate. No, it is a different structure. We don't need to study it right now because we don't have any Shakespearean sonnets to study. But the structure is different. Therefore, it's called a Shakespearean sonnet. And since Vicky insists on knowing, the third type of sonnet is a Spenserian sonnet. Edward Spenser, also very important in English literature. You don't need to worry your heads with it. He also wrote sonnets, and his sonnets had a different structure. So his sonnets are separate and they are called a Spenserian sonnets. His name was Edward Spenser, so Spenserian. William Shakespeare, so Shakespearean. Petrarch, so Petrarchan. But we are now concerned. Vicky, I hope you're fully satisfied. But we are concerned only with the Petrarchan sonnet, okay, which is commonly called the Italian sonnet. Because Shakespeare was English, his sonnets are commonly called English sonnets. Okay, so wonderful. So anything else you want to ask for which I know the answer, I'll be happy to answer. Anything else? No? So everybody seems to be quiet. So I think this has been a lot of information which you've had today. All the information has been new information. So I please request you not only to read the poem, but also to read what you have written. Didi, please write down the names of the sonnets. No, we cannot write the names of the sonnets. There are so many sonnets which so many people have written. We can't write down the names. We can write down the names of the 3 types if you want. Okay. So I will put all this on the chat so that again you can have the words again. Though Rakshita has written every single thing beautifully, we can't take a copy of we can't take a photo of the chat box. Can we, Rakshita?
We can, please. I'll just take it.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant girl. Yeah. So Rakshita is going to take a picture of the chat box, hopefully put it up on our participants or on our 4 p.m. chat, right? Our English chat. So you are going to get all these words again. And she has very nicely put the meaning of every one of them. So you got nothing to worry about. All the difficult words with their correct spellings and meanings are given to you. Amazing. Okay. So thank you everybody very much. And most thanks to Rakshita. Thank you, Arushi, for starting our call. From next Thursday, Rakshita Didi is going to start teaching. All right. And she is going to start teaching you all the practical things which you need to know. We have been talking only of the first 2 modules of this book, prose and poetry. We have not finished, so don't worry, we are not closing, we will continue. But Rakshita Didi is now going to take over from me for section 3. All right, and she is going to do some of the very practical things we need in English, which are